Skylinx is one of the characters in Transformers media that has an unmistakable design. The Dragon Bird Lynx Thing hybrid managed to get a toy that was actually a dead ringer of its cartoon in Generation 1, even where this kind of shit was the norm. He was the first and I think the only example of a beast mode duocon that transforms into one enormous monster of a thing. His motorized walking gimmick was welcome for the time, but the whole lights and sounds thing never really appealed to me as an animator. He was such a peak performance figure with actual articulation and a design that was impossible to screw up. So when Combiner Wars announced they were finally releasing a new one that could be a freaking Combiner torso, I was excited. And then it came out and turned out to be a trash fire, and it came out in the wrong scale. Oh well, better luck next time. Whatever the hell that's gonna be. But then, in 2020, out of complete nowhere, we finally got a release as a Commander-class whopper of a thing, and they essentially vacuumed the money straight out of my wallet. Starting him out in the shuttle transport mode, Skylinx's sheer mass is a sight to behold, which is naturally why people complained about him downsizing because he was an actual 14 inches tall. Honestly, saying Skylinx is too small because he doesn't have Jetfire's wingspan is like putting Seed Sideswipe on all fours and saying he's a $20 Micromaster. This thing is borderline too big for my review shelf, and I was just barely able to get the animation shot the whole time I was filming this. The shuttle transport mode is absolutely lousy with detail everywhere. As much as the Lynx transforms into a glorified outer space freezer block, they at least attempted to sculpt some shreds into the feet to compensate. It was a nice attempt, but didn't quite stick the landing as being an autonomous vehicle. The detail on the shuttle mode is to absolutely die for though. From the golden windows making his deranged compromises for eyes in his Lynx mode, to the perfect shade of non-off-white making Ape-Face look like a sad sack of puke, to the absolutely stunning giant Autobot logos on the wings in gold. This thing not only managed to smash the 2 model out of the ballpark, but has the word magnificent written on the side of his shuttle mode. How does this thing exist? I love the modern updated NASA logo as well. This thing brings us back on the trip to the late 80s where shit wasn't complicated in the toy market and the globe was on actual fire. The toys were simple and life was good. I was born in '96 by the way, so none of this is relevant to me. The gorgeously sculpted boosters on the back are also Siege Blast Effect compatible, and this thing comes with them, making the set pretty much perfect for me. This thing takes a peak performance 80s toy space shuttle and obliterates our preconceived notions of what one of these things can be. So how can they possibly have made this thing any better? Let's take a look at mode number 2, the new Modular Battle Station mode. Transforming this thing is a matter of rotating the front thighs of the Lynx mode and folding them back, splitting the back thighs in half, rotating out the 2 tails, folding down the ramps, and plopping the shuttle on top and opening it up for cargo. Skylinx's base mode is an act of genius unlike the world has ever seen before. There's so much play value to this thing it isn't even funny. Micromasters can hide inside, and this thing's compatible with the airlocking gimmick, meaning Astro Train, Hoist, Prime's Trailer, Ironworks, and any modulated compatible figures can attach to the sides of this thing. The base mode on this thing is also hugely expansive and absolutely gigantic. I'm loving Earthrise's focus on world building and star maps. It's showing off some of the locations on Cybertron that we haven't ever really seen before and have never really been given any media representation in the past, while also adding a really cool gimmick to the toy line. This thing has basically limitless play value, and despite the extreme simplicity of the Lynx have to become the buildings surrounding the shuttle, the amount it manages to achieve in so few steps is insane. Slap on some weaponizers and go goddamn crazy for all I care. The Lynx mode's a matter of folding down the ramps, bringing in the back thighs, bringing down the front feet, and folding out the head. The bird mode explodes by folding out the thruster to the side, pulling out the tail, folding down the wings, folding up the bird feet, and then ripping his insane neck joint out, followed by one last step of spreading out the wingspan. While I've never been a huge fan of the bird mode, this is by far the best attempt at this thing I've ever seen. One huge thing that almost threw me off this set was the very skinny and gangly looking chicken legs. I didn't think that they'd be able to support the weight of the figure. They aren't as bad as I thought, but they aren't necessarily great either, being somewhat floppy and easy to pop off their mushroom pegs. But then suddenly, holy shit, Skylinx can perch on shit like an anatomically correct bird. Skylinx, more like Sly Lynx. How the actual hell did they manage to make such a stable mode out of something so fundamentally flawed in proportions? It isn't perfect, but it's damn close to it. Yet another borderline perfect feature is that the tongue has a siege port and an ass ton of blast effects to roast his enemies alive. This is the unhinged, egomaniacal sociopath I want Skylinx to be right here. Cook your enemies, show no mercy, you magnificent beast. As for the Lynx mode, it actually pulls quite a few tricks. The shoulders can pop out to your liking to make them more broad and intimidating, which is pretty cool. It's not as cool as Jetfire's hands popping out and having the 5mm port on the inside, but it's still pretty cool. What is cool, though, is the absolutely to die for golden head sculpt, and also the tongue blast effect ports for even more roasting your enemies alive. This thing's also lousy with detail. I've already said that 5 times already, so there's not much left to discuss about their split modes. Let's take a look about the mastermind behind this operation in Mode 4, Skylinx in its final form. Skylinx's transformation is baby simple. Just flipping the Lynx head and tails, folding the bird feet, and plot the bird mode on top of the legs. This is an extremely simple transformation, but it somehow manages to achieve more than the Combiner Wars version could with the Combiner Torso mode. The detail on this thing's as insane as ever, and I'm loving this head sculpt. The gold windows have fantastic eyes, and the sculpt is for the 5th goddamn time on this thing is to absolutely die for. I absolutely love the teeth on this thing too. It makes it look like he's laughing at the people who are trying to attack him because it's Skylinx and he's gonna rip you in half. The face sculpt also screams snarky smartass energy in a way that I can definitely relate to. The way the bird mode fits in the Lynx mode is actually really convincing and organic too, but the Shuttle has a bit of a difficult time pegging into the back. You have to tab it in at an angle and latch it onto the front to make it work, which is an extremely nitpicky ass gripe if it counts as one. The other issue I have on this thing is the wings. They're a floppy mess attached by loose mushroom pegs that pop off somewhat easily if you don't know what you're doing. Speaking of wing movement, this thing features insane neck articulation from side to side and a shit heap of other hinges. The shoulders rotate, the wings move up and down, the toes tilt and bend back and forth, double jointed knees, and up and down at the tail. I do wish the tail could move side to side, but again, welcome to nitpicky ass gripes with a stop motion reviewer. Other than that, Skylinx's everything is basically flawless in every possible way. Don't give Hasbro any ideas here, but this thing seems almost underpriced to me. I mean, out of this thing you get a shuttle with a transport, a base mode, 2 individual larger than leader class smaller figures, smaller, sure, and a behemoth sized bird lynx hybrid mode. So here's the pros and cons. The pros are he's friggin' Skylinx, has amazing articulation, great detail, a ton of play value, and a price point that's more than justified for the size. The cons are the wings are a bit fragile and finicky in some areas, and sometimes the mushroom pegs on the thighs come off on rare occasion if you don't know what you're doing. Going back to my old ranking system, this time with a lot more thought and consideration put into the figure, Skylinx still earns a solid 9.5 out of 10. I can't commend Hasbro enough on this thing. It's simply too good to actually exist at this price. This has been the Stop Motion Reviewer with my review on Earthrise Skylinx. My final opinion on this figure is get him ASAP. Also, Optimus Prime riding Skylinx is now a thing, and I just blew your mind.